span over the past 30 years was in 1994 when Henry Waxman had the 7 CEOs of the 7 tobacco companies onto Capitol Hill. He forced them to come up there. And here was an industry that had been killing 1 out of every 4 of its customers who used its product as directed for 60 years. Everybody knew that they were doing this. Every doctor knew that the impact of smoking. And they had for 6 decades, and they've been able to keep themselves unregulated by creating this vast web of the Tobacco Institute and these other phony think tanks, and they'd fill them with these phony tobacco scientists we call biostitutes, and they produced these reams of slick studies that said there was no connection between cancer, other health impacts, and no addictive effects of nicotine. And Henry Waxman got the 7 heads, the 7 tobacco companies. And these were respected CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, nice people invited them to their houses and were not afraid to be seen with them. Politicians loved to be seen. And he had them all standing in a row with their hands raised, swearing under oath that they believed that tobacco was not addictive and that there were no adverse health impacts from smoking. And everybody in the country saw that. And it was not only important to the battle to finally regulate tobacco, but it was also a critical civics lesson for the American people. Because what it said to everybody in this country who knew that those men were lying was that people in authority lie, and that polluters lie, and they do it to make money. And that need to question authority is a critical aspect, a critical ingredient of a successful democracy. To question authority, to stand up and speak truth to power. And that's something that Henry Waxman has been doing for the past 40 years. And he's been, not only has he had that courage and had that skepticism and shown that to the American people, and this other wonderful quality, which is a complete lack of wanting to get his picture in the paper, and a complete devotion and commitment to doing what he does because it's the right thing to do. Because of that, he has been, and this is not hyperbole, he's been the most effective congressperson of any party in 40 years in the House. In the last 40 years, he's done more in Congress. And my house, we think of him as the Ted Kennedy of the House. I feel very lucky because we had this very, very powerful and effective man. And he did what Teddy used to do, which was he would be effective when he was in the minority and when he was in the majority. And there's nobody else who can do that. That was a real skill, and it came from the lack of any kind of egotistical need to bring attention to himself. He was always willing to give attention, to give the credit to somebody else. And he said, if you're willing to give the credit to somebody else, then you can get anything done on Capitol Hill. And he proved that year after year after year when Congress was in the minority, when Congress was in the majority. And I'm so grateful that his issue was the environment, because many of these laws we passed after 1970 when he came in, we passed 28 major environmental laws in this country that protect our air and water and wildlife and fisheries and public lands and all of the commons, the things that can't be, those assets that can't be reduced to private property ownership, by their nature are the property of the whole community, the commons, the public trust assets, the things that we all share, and that the principal role of government is to make sure that they, whether you're rich or poor, humble or noble, white or black, you have the right to breathe clean air, and nobody has the right to take that away from you. And you have the right to drink clean water, and no polluter is allowed to take that away from you. And it was so important what he did, because one of the things that I encounter all the time is I have a speaking bureau that for 30 years has been sending me out to rural areas and to red states to speak. I speak to about 60 or 70,000 people a year, and they're mainly Republicans. And they're in Kansas and Mississippi and Dayton, Ohio, and I get very, very good receptions from them. And I think they're surprised to hear somebody talk about the environment in ways that they don't expect. I came to the conclusion a long time ago that 80% of Republicans are just Democrats who don't know what's going on. Henry Waxman, and people say to me all the time, you can hear the kind of the innocence and the optimism about human nature. But they say, well, surely Jack Welch would not, when he was CEO of GE, would not have put PCBs in the river just to cut costs so he could make better profits when he knew they were toxic. Surely the Koch brothers are not giving $100 million to the political process so that they can make money. They're doing it because they love America. Surely Don Blankenship from Massey Energy, the big mountaintop removal company, is not knowingly poisoning people in West Virginia. And we need to be skeptical about people like that. We need to be skeptical of everybody in power. And many of them are very good people. But many of them are not as well. And it's important in our democracy that we question authority. And he's always done that, and he's been effective, and he's, we wouldn't have a Clean Air Act without him. We wouldn't have a Safe Drinking Water Act without him. We would not have RCRA anymore. We wouldn't have CERCLA, which regulates solid waste that contaminates water and the ground and soils. And all of these critical acts would not have happened without Henry Waxman. I really don't know. I think he is a national treasure. I really don't know what we're going to do without him. But we're losing him and George Mitchell the same year, two Californians who have driven the environmental agenda and safeguarded our environment from the assaults by the right wing, the big polluters and their indentured servants on Capitol Hill over the past 40 years. And I don't know what we're going to do without him. He has fought continuously to confront this argument that an investment in our environment is diminishment of our nation's wealth, to inform the American public that we don't have to choose. There's the mantra of the big polluters and their toadies. We have to choose between economic prosperity and environmental protection. He has said no, they're the same thing in 100% of the situations. Good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy if we want to measure our economy. If we want to measure our economy, and this is how we ought to measure it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do what the big polluters have been urging us to do, which is to treat the planet as if it were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resource to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, and make a few people billionaires by impoverishing the rest of them. We can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy. Our children are going to pay for our joyride. And they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes, poor health, and huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time, and that they will never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. That's what Henry Waxman has taught us for 40 years. And he has fought this idea that an investment in our environment diminishes our country's wealth. It doesn't do that. It's the same as investing in infrastructure and road construction or telecommunications. It's an investment we have to make if we're going to ensure the economic vitality of our generation and future generations. And there's so many kids today in this country who are healthy because of Henry Waxman, who don't have cancer because of Henry Waxman, and who have higher IQs because of Henry Waxman. It's measurably. Your children seem smarter than you, don't they? Anybody who's got kids, they're smarter than you. That's the first thing you learn. They actually are smarter than you. These studies have been done, and it's because of Henry Waxman, because he got the lead out of the gasoline and our kids with higher IQs. I'm right about that. So anyway, if there were, all I got from him is this: if there were justice in this country, he'd be on Mount Rushmore. But for now, we're going to give him